Lacee, I want to go to you first. Before you tell us where you first saw this, because we're asking you about this, what is your take on the posters themselves?
Well, to be honest, anything that has Val Kilmer on the poster, I'm good. He was one of my very first crushes, so I can't say that when I was younger I noticed anything about the posters other than the fact that Val Kilmer was on it. But I think that as a marketing campaign, I like the Einstein one. I don't remember seeing that one either. Yeah.
What about you, Lee? Do you remember seeing that one?
I vaguely remember seeing this at the video store in the mall when I was a kid. It's something like my dad was one of those dorks with the Einstein shirt, and I just thought this was funny. To me, though, the only poster is that first one where he's sitting there. He's got the toxic waste shirt on. You've got all the other stuff, because the DVD cover looks like they tried to put him in Tron.
It does.
It doesn't look like Val Kilmer from any discernible time period. Other than the chin, you can't really tell that this isn't from the 2000s.
And it looks like they're giving him like a Frankenstein treatment with this shock therapy in between, So yeah, it is weird.
And the hairset helps to sell that, because that is some 80s level moosing right there.
It is. Lacee?
It reminds me of the ball that you would put your hand on that had the whatever...
Yeah.
The little electrodes that would follow your fingers around the sphere. Yeah. Kyle, what's your take on the posters?
I remember the one, obviously, of Val Kilmer sitting there with crisscross floating with bunny slippers on and all the stuff around him. And, of course, the classic DVD cover and stuff. But I'm like you, Kevin. I really never saw this one of him and the Chris Knight character and Einstein together until you actually put the notes for this podcast together.
Yeah. I did some Google foo on that one. We got some taglines here. Who else can turn lasers into light shows, aircraft into armchairs, and high-tech into hijinks? We need brains to act this crazy. When he gets mad, he doesn't get even. He gets creative. Meet Chris Knight, the Einstein of the 80s. He can turn the simple into the simply amazing, and now he turns revenge into high comedy. It's yet another in a long series of diversions in an attempt to avoid responsibility. All right, Lacee, I want to ask you your personal notes and where and when you were first introduced to this film.
Well, let's see, 84, 85, I was probably 12. I do remember seeing it in the theater. I don't know that I had permission to see it in the theater from my parents. I can't remember. I feel like it was still a PG rating back then. But I remember seeing it in the theater, and I just loved it. I probably saw it several times. And then as I moved along through life, 3 or 4 years later, that was one of the first movies that I remember seeing on VHS when I worked in Blockbuster. It was like the first movie I actually shelved when I got my first job at Blockbuster.
Do you remember how soon it came out on VHS?
No, like I said, I was probably 12, maybe 13, but back then you're looking at, a year before you would get anything, on a VHS. And I don't know that VHS was really that common at that point. I mean, I want to say it was like 87, maybe 88 before Blockbuster even happened. Right.
Kevin, I want to say this was one of those ones that had a really long delay in hitting VHS. I think it was almost 2 years from the release of the movie before it hit VHS.
Right. Yeah. What about you, Kyle? What about your first experience seeing this?
My first experience is I saw it on home video. I remember renting it and watching it and absolutely just loving Val Kilmer in this. In fact, I would say this is probably my second favorite Val Kilmer role.
Interesting.
Only behind Tombstone.
I'm disappointed in that answer. I would have said Top Secret, but that's okay. Lee, where were you first introduced to this comedy classic?
I like how we're kind of all over the board on this. I was introduced to it on cable, and I kept on catching the last, basically like the government plot. So I would catch that part of it, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool, and you'd see, hey, they're blowing up popcorn in this guy's house with like no precursor, like absolutely having no idea of the plot. But I just remember it was really funny, and the slippers, with the president of the college. But eventually, I think I caught the whole thing and just laughed myself silly. And this is back in the days when you got a little printout of the schedule on HBO and Cinemax. And so I'd actually look into the glossary or the the showtimes and back, and I would actually plan to be. It's like, hey, Mom, can I go to Dad's house on this weekend?
Okay, Lee, I'm proud that I think you slipped up and said Skinamax and not Cinemax.
No, that's not a mistake. That's what it was. You don't like. Yeah, they played normal stuff during the day so they could do the regular stuff. There's no. You don't get Cinemax for real movies. That's what HBO is for.
So, I remember seeing Top Secret in the theater, and I saw it more than once. I loved it. But this film, for whatever reason, I don't remember it coming to the theater. I may have kind of, here in my hometown, now that I'm back here in Santa Barbara, I don't remember it having that much of a theater run here. But I caught it on video later, and I want to say either it was, I want to say I rented it, or I did see it on basic cable television with commercials, and then friends of mine saying, "Oh, you got to see this," because I remember when Weird Science came out. There was Weird Science, My Science Project, and this film came out like all around the same year, and it was like the science comedy year. And I saw Weird Science. I didn't see My Science Project till later as well. So I either saw it on television, or I want to say in television, then maybe watched it on video. Kyle,
you just brought up a good point. I think that's one of the things with this film. I think this movie and like My Science Project was just so lost because Weird Science was just such a huge hit.
Yeah. It was the box office winner of the science films. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of just, everything just got pushed back behind it. And I really don't think this movie actually started getting its proper turn until Val Kilmer really started hitting it big with Top Gun.
True. Yeah, definitely. So I want to ask you guys on your favorite scenes. I've listed a bunch here, of course, where Chris meets Sherry and Dr. Todd, where the all brains and no penis line comes in, where Chris meets Mitch, the dorm room sledding, moles and trolls scene. A couple of these I just kind of put together, the Laszlo secret closet and Mitch trying to find Laszlo and finding his secret lair, the laser beam trail to the party. Oh, that party. The revenge prank on Kent #1, where Mitch Taylor's embarrassed by him and they end up putting his Citroen car in his room. Am I pronouncing that right, Lee?
Close enough.
Yeah. Also, Chris Knight trying to hit on Susan, who played by Deborah Foreman, the beautiful woman he finds in The Professor in Hathaway House, about her asking about this 6-inch spike and what he might be able to do with it. Mitch and Jordan kissing. The successful laser test that when it was eventually stolen in the Revenge Prank 2 with Kent with the antenna in his teeth. This is Jesus, Kent. You have been a very naughty boy. And then, of course, the final popcorn prank on the professor's house. I want to get your guys' take on some of your favorite scenes there. Lacey, let's start with you.
I will say that the open that we had a little while ago where he was talking about the dream is one of my favorites. To this day, when I have something amazing happen, I will scream, "How's it feel to be frozen?" It's just something, and everyone's like, "What?" So it's kind of a deep cut. But I think that some of my favorite scenes in that movie are very much Mitch's backstory and his, like, anything with his mother, it just kills me. When she looks at the very beginning, when she looks at Professor Hathaway and starts talking about his show on radioactive isotopes and says, "I have a question. Is that your real hair?" And you just know at that moment that, like, this is, exactly who Mitch is.
Right.
Just from that one question. Because she sounds very, very, she sounds like she's about to, and then it just, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Any other scenes stand out for you?
Well, the phone call, the bullying scene that was a very brutal scene to watch. I think that a lot of the TV and movies at that time kind of shied away and did that kind of like boys will be boys, but they didn't actually show, the revenge stuff, and the fact that Mitch did have the moral imperative to get back at Kent was, I think that sometimes films back then kind of ignored that and didn't give the just desserts. Right. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Lee, what about you? What are some of your favorite scenes?
I really like the personal scenes between Mitch and Chris, just because it seems like it's almost like reading Plato's Republic, because Chris is constantly challenging Mitch on philosophy. You know, they're completely on the same page with science, and their brains work together. But when he's like, you know, I mean, they're talking about like all science, no philosophy, the lesson that he learns from Laszlo later on in the movie. Like, this is one of those things, rewatch it, you start to see all the seeds that they lay early on in the show. But he's literally trying to save Mitch from becoming Laszlo and from making the same mistakes that he did. But through this kind of myopic view of science, that he still does it. But, you know, I mean, like the first time you see him, you know, his thing is like, Mitch, I used to be you, and I found myself missing you. So I talked to Jerry, and he decided to room you with me. And then you've got that wonderful, you know, this is yet another one of the long excuses to avoid responsibility. He's got this, you know, gyrocopter flying around, flies out the window. Oh my God, it's going to hit the gas tanks, drops to the floor. Would you consider that a launch problem or a design problem? And like, he's constantly challenging him to think and to get outside of just this scientific mindset. And it's beautiful. And he does the same thing to Jerry every time he goes to the house, you know, and he's constantly just like needling him. Like, you don't get, like, it's more than this. And
I'd like to see less of you. I'll lose weight.
Exactly. Well, at that end, I will say when he meets Susan, I have used this line, and I'm so like ashamed and proud to say it. If there's anything I can do for you, or more to the point, to you, just let me know. I love that this movie is rare enough that I don't get called out on that line. It's worked more than it should, especially for somebody that looks like me.
Kyle, what about you? What are some of your favorite scenes?
There's a few. I'm a big fan of the whole chasing the laser to get to the party. I think that's a great scene. The scene in Hathaway's house when he meets Susan for the first time. I mean, just the fact of how the interaction between those two is so good. But another one of my favorite scenes is the second Revenge on Kent when they wire his braces. So he, I mean, and just, Kent, this is Jesus. And then it becomes a running joke almost basically for the rest of the film. And that's that's what makes it even better. But another one of my favorite scenes is when Mitch finds Laszlo's lair.
Yes.
Because it's all of a sudden you can kind of see it, like maybe it kind of clicks with him what Chris was trying to do. And he sees this and he's like, he can see either path now. And I think it was handled very well with that. And just fun for me was when Ick makes the ice, and then when it hits gaseous form, it could explode.
Those are good ones. I like that laser test to the party scene a lot because you get this is where you kind of get a really good scene with Jordan and Mitch, and I find those scenes with him endearing. So Lacey,
and that's where the second future director's cameo is with Dean Devlin showing up at the pool party.
That's right. Yeah, very young Dean.
Yeah, the first one would be the shuttlecraft pilot was played by Stacy Peralta.
That's right. Yeah, you know who Stacy is. Yeah, very cool. That's awesome.
Lockdown and Z-Boys, yo.
What's interesting too about these scenes, and when I was rewatching this again, they really laid down the montages in this. There was the montage number 1, the studying scene to the song "I'm Falling" by the Comsat Angels. And then you have montage number 2, the scene laser testing and more studying scene, ending with the student going crazy and panicking to the song number 1 by Chaz Jenkel. And then you kind of have a smaller third one where that's the test exam that you see Chris taking and kind of being under the thumb and the rule of the professor there. So I always thought that was kind of interesting. So, Lee.
I was going to say, like, can we talk about how brilliantly these montages were done? Because they're montages of people sitting there.
Yes.
And it's interesting and funny somehow. Like,
yes.
Rocky, he constantly has to be doing something big and like, oh man, that looks really hard. I don't know if I could do that. Like, these montages is like, Yeah, we've all sat there studying, and somehow, like, maybe it's because it's relatable.
Very excellent point. Yeah, it kind of sets the tone for how hard these guys are working and stuff, and how humorous it can be. So that's a good point.
And there's one thing I also wanted to mention, just on scenes, as I was watching this for the notes, realizing how much they laid the groundwork in the beginning for later scenes. Just the opening credits. They've got like all these plans of, various types of weapons, but the song they play, "You Took Advantage of Me." And like, okay, that sets the stage, but like, the actor that plays Kent doesn't actually have braces. They had him wear braces, A, to make him look like a doofus, and B, to set up the joke in the end. They just keep on throwing these little itty bits of, information out there so that everybody can do it. The President's Luncheon, it's only there to introduce the president so that we know who he is. When they succeed with the laser, they go to Purgatory Burger.
True.
They constantly lay the grounds for the ice just so that it's like, oh yeah, this is this great idea, because they've got, what other reason is there for putting the frozen quarters in there? And then later on they have the ice capades. Like, they're just constantly doing these little things. It's so cool that they thought of doing that.
That's a great point. Great point there. So I just want to touch real quick on quotes. We've kind of said a few of them already, but Lacey, I want to give you a chance for the favorite quotes in the film.
I think that the introduction to Chris, where the guy says, "Why is that thing in your head?" And he says, "If I wear it anywhere else, it chafes." It's one of my favorites. Like I said, how's it feel to be frozen? And then I have on occasion said, "Is that your real hair?" to someone who is obviously not wearing a toupee, but it's just, it's fun. I like the quotability of "Is that your real hair?" And you got to put on that Midwestern twang to it. You got
yes, this is true. Yeah. Kyle or Lee, you guys have any quotes that you like, Lee?
Oh, I was going to say, "That's a wonderful story, Bodie. I noticed he stopped stuttering. I've been giving myself shock treatments. Up the voltage." What are you doing out here? "I was pondering the immortal words of Socrates, who said, 'I drank what?'" He was sentenced to death by drinking hemlock. Just all these weird little things. Your parents are different. You'll find that you're different from other people. Better. Just all these amazing, weird little inside jokes, or like subtle jokes. Do you know this guy living in her closet? You've seen him too? Who is he? Holyfield. Why does he keep going into our closet? Why do you keep going into our closet? You get my clothes, but that's not why he goes in there. Of course not. He's twice your size. Your clothes would never fit him. Think before you ask these questions. It's 20 points higher than me. This guy like that can wear his clothes.
This script is good. Oh man, Kyle, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, no, just a couple quotes I like, but two. That's one of the things that makes this movie is Val Kilmer's delivery. Val Kilmer just nails it on the delivery of all these lines. But there's some of these lines too that are just, he's being so brazen, and and there's a couple quotes I'm like this is ice. This is what happens to water when it gets too cold. This is Kent. This is what happens to people when they get too sexually frustrated. or to me, one of my favorite ones that's the boldest. "Have you ever seen a body like this before in your life? She happens to be my daughter." "Oh, then I guess you have."
Yeah, the one that stands out to me, because I remember when I was first watching it, I alluded to it earlier, is when he is hitting on Susan, and Susan says, "Just out of the blue, can you hammer a 6-inch spike through the board with your penis?" And I was like, "She said what?" But the best part about that, though, is the reaction that Chris has, Val Kilmer, and he's like, "Wow, that girl's on fire." It's just so good.
And there's also the, "What about that time I found you naked with a bowl of Jell-O?" "It was hot and I was hungry."
All right, got to ask this. We always have fun with this question. Who is your movie crush in the film? Kyle, I'm going to go over to you.
I'm gonna hit you with one I don't think you're expecting. I kind of was crushing on Sherry.
No, I know where you're coming from.
The one that was looking for the smartest man in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
No. She was definitely who I would have been crushing on.
What about you, Lee?
I'm all about Jordan.
Yeah.
Girl's kind of a little bit crazy, you know, in the right way. And she'll be sanding her floors and making me a sweater, you know, designing a new scuba rebreather, you know, sweet, dorky, you know, that's my kind of girl.
Gotcha. And Lacey, who is your movie crush?
Definitely Val Kilmer. I actually, when I was about 16 or 17, I dated a guy whose name was Greg, but he looked so much like Val Kilmer that I actually didn't realize his name was Greg until we had been on like 4 dates, because all of his friends called him Chris. And he was like, no, my name's Greg. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? He was like, oh, Chris Knight. Everyone calls me. And I'm like, what is going on? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Well, just like Parzival in Ready Player One, I got a little crush on Jordan, that hyperkinetic thing she's got going on. But I obviously want to give a shout out, honorable mention to Susan, played by Deborah Foreman.
Mm-hmm.
So
we also throw some love out for the student beauticians.
Yes, in the party scene by the pool. Yeah. Might as well.
Give them all hamburgers, my friend.
Wanda Trussler. Trussler's School of Beauty.
Yes, nice. Yeah. Shouldn't eat those hamburgers. That's right.
God, we're too late.
To prepare for Real Genius, Martha Coolidge spent months researching her technology, the laser technology, and the policies of the CIA, and interviewed dozens of students at Caltech. The screenplay was extensively written first by Lowell Gantz and Babalu Mandel, later by Coolidge and Peter Torokvei. Producer Brian Grazer, we all know who he is, very famous producer, remembers that when Val Kilmer came into the audition for the role of Chris Knight, he bought candy bars and performed tricks. Kilmer remembered it differently. The character wasn't polite, so when I shook Grazer's hand and he said, "Hi, I'm the producer," I said, "I'm sorry, you look like you're 12 years old. I like to work with men." We'll talk more on the popcorn in the house in the trivia later on. But to promote the film, the studio held what it's billed as the world's first computer press conference, with Coolidge and Grazer answering journalist questions via computer terminals and relayed them over CompuServe computer network. The dorm in the film is based on Dabney House at Caltech, and Caltech students served as consultants and played extras in the film. Kyle, they went kind of very techie on this to produce or to promote this. I obviously have no memory of this, but when you say CompuServe, you might as well throw out like Blockbuster and all those things that are days gone. Ding. And then, I mean, this is pre AOL we're even talking about here. So come on now. Come on. Let's be honest. We would have all loved to have gone to college and lived in that dorm. If nothing else, because we would have access to the ice, so we didn't actually have to pay for our soft drinks and snacks. The director is Martha Coolidge, and she has a few cult classics under her belt. Of course, Real Genius here. But one of my favorites of all time is Valley Girl, the director of Valley Girl, which also had Deborah Foreman in it. She also directed Rambling Rose, but she's done a lot of television series as well. She did a Sledgehammer episode, which I thought was very cool.
I love that show so much.
So do I. It's right over here in my collection. But what was funny was when I looked it up, I said, wait, she did Joy of Sex that came out in 1984, which is the year after Valley Girl in 83. And I was like, wait, Joy of Sex, did I see that? Because it also starred the actress that played Jordan. And I'm like, wait a minute, have I seen this? I don't know if I've seen this before. So it was Michelle Meyrink. So I went on to eBay, couldn't find it on DVD, not even on Laserdisc. Very hard to find. So I picked up the VHS Joy of Sex and checked it out. Yeah. R-rated sex romp comedy, pretty much. Also co-starring Christopher Lloyd as the gym teacher. And the character, of course, is the main character, and of course, is the girl that played Jordan. It wasn't great, It was entertaining, though. It also had the guy that played Kent, by the way, which is interesting. But it was fun. Definitely kind of one of those things you probably would see on Skinamax there, Lee. I don't know if did you ever see this?
No, but I'm going to hop on eBay now because Jordan's my crush.
Lacey, what is your knowledge on Martha Coolidge, the director? Have you seen these other films?
Oh, yeah. I've seen a lot of the stuff she's done. She actually did a couple episodes of Psych. She's done some more recent stuff as well. So, hello. She's done some episodes of Psych that I really enjoyed. I believe she did the episode where Jonathan Silverman is the liar that is just everything he says is so outlandish. I want to say that's the one that I've seen most recently. She has a tendency to use the same people, which is something that we see in the traditional auteur, which is nice. So I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, she's her last credit was in 2019, so she's still active, which is good. Lee, you obviously are familiar with Martha Coolidge and her work.
Oh yeah, and as soon as you said Sledgehammer, I just had to kind of click over to IMDb. That show was just way too funny and misunderstood, and that was they ended a season on a cliffhanger because they were getting canceled.
Not just a cliffhanger, but wasn't it like an atomic bomb that went off?
Yeah. And it's got his captain, like a bomb goes off in the middle of downtown LA or whatever, and his captain is like, hammer! That's right. Remember that.
That was the end of season 2. That's right.
Yeah.
Kyle, I'm a big fan of Martha. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she did this. She did Valley Girl. She's done a lot of interesting TV when you look at her IMDb too, especially recently. She's done a lot of comedy. She did Psych. She actually did several episodes of CSI. She also has done a couple episodes for the show I like called The Glades. She also did some episodes of Madam Secretary, as well as the kind of oddball comedy series that was on TBS, the Angie Tribeca.
Yes.
But
yeah.
Yeah, she's been kind of in a bit of everything. She really hasn't done much in the way of movies most recently, but it looks like she kind of hit her peak for movies about the time she did Real Genius and Joy of Sex and things like that. Valley Girl, obviously, as well.
Right. Well, that leads us into the cast. I want to get you guys' take on the cast here because it is a fun ensemble here. Of course, we've got Val Kilmer as Chris Knight, Gabriel Jarret as Mitch Taylor, Michelle Meyrink as Jordan, and a bunch of other actors. And I noticed some actors from, or at least one of them anyway, from like Revenge of the Nerds, and there are a bunch in there. But it also has probably Hollywood's biggest dick.
Exactly. Wait.
Dolph Lundgren?
Hold on, Kyle. Do you want to say it?
Yeah. This man has no dick.
Yes. William Atherton is the perfect movie jerk, of course, famous in Ghostbusters with that line, and tries to shut the Ghostbusters down. He was also the jerk reporter in the original Die Hard, and of course he just kind of continues to play the same character and get typecast. Am I missing any other jerk roles that he's done? Because I'm sure he's done a few more. I'm not sure. But let's start with you, Lacey. What is your take on the cast?
I think the cast is I think the casting director knew what they wanted, and they did really well making sure that everything was. I think the chemistry between all the different co-stars was palpable. I think it was really well done. I would like to mention the one uncredited cameo that was Tom Hanks in the President's Luncheon, where we are introduced to him, or the side of his head.
Yeah, he kind of Mitch kind of bumps into him, and he kind of looks at it, and he's like a very young Tom Hanks. Yes.
Yeah. I think that Val Kilmer and his ability to the speed of his responses and his timing and his humor. I don't think that he has recreated that I think that he actually pulled that back out when he did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Like, that's the most recent thing that I've seen him do, where he was just such like that fast talking,
right,
like comic wit. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So.
Kyle?
No, I completely agree with what Lacey just said as far as Val Kilmer. And that was the nice thing about this cast. There weren't a lot of superstars in this cast. This was before Val Kilmer really hit it big. He'd just done Top Secret a year prior. So he hadn't really hit to that huge status yet that he really didn't get to until he did Top Gun, which is right after Real Genius. But yeah, as far as like that, I think that's one of the lost things with Val Kilmer is we really lost a lot of his kind of quirky, fast-paced humor aspect that he did Top Secret, he did Real Genius, and then after that, it was kind of like
serious roles.
Serious roles. The only times I really think he said is like Lacee said, "Kiss Kiss Bang Bang," but I think he pulled it off a little bit with Willow too.
That's true. And Willow. That's a good point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he took on so many serious roles after that, and I think a lot of it had to do to when he took on the role of Jim Morrison in The Doors. His
and then he played another Chris in Heat as well. So but a different version. So yeah,
but the casting alone, just everybody fit. This is one of those films that the casting director and everybody involved with the casting of the film they were all on the same wavelength and they hit it perfectly. And it's a home run casting as far as this film goes.
Lee, what's your take on the cast?
I absolutely loved it, and kind of like Kyle was saying, this was a really good fit for the cast. I will say there was one other really funny movie that Val Kilmer did, The Saint. Now it was kind of an action movie, but he had some really funny performances in there. That kind of like, to me, it's like, oh yeah, I remember he used to be funny. One thing I really like, this is a young John Grease, who was Laszlo Holyfeld, and he was, among other things, Uncle Rico. And he was actually
in what movie? In
Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes, there you go.
How much you bet I can throw a football over the mountains? It just beautifully done performance there. He was one of my favorite shows. We actually talked on another podcast about it, but The Pretender, he had a pretty good role in there. But I really like that one. I don't think that anybody else could have played Mitch. Gabe Jarret didn't really have a great career after this. He had a couple episodes of 21 Jump Street and then kind of bit parting. He's still working and everything, but it never really took off. But the innocence and the earnestness was real instead of acted. And I think a lot of actors at that age or playing that age overdo it in one direction or another, but he did really well. And trying to look up the name of the actor that played Kent, but it's always weird seeing what movie he does next because he was like this big jock bully in Bachelor Party.
Right.
And he plays this huge nerd later.
Lee, his name was Robert Prescott.
Of course it is.
Lacee, you had a comment?
I just wanted to throw out that while we're talking about John Grise, Wolfman in the Monster Squad. Wolfman got nards is still one of the most quotable things that you can say to anyone.
I've got a t-shirt with that on it.
Me too.
I forgot that was him.
And then you turn the page and he's one of Liam Neeson's backup for the Taken series. He can go from like this really quiet, just timid to badass,
And he was a hippie in The Abyss, the guy with the mouse or with the rat. Yeah.
I just want to throw out, you said no one else could play Mitch. For some reason for years, I thought Jason Bateman could have done it. Jason Bateman he was born in 1969, so he would have been about 14, 15 at the time. I thought that kind of would have been interesting, but
he's too naturally funny though.
It's true.
Everything Mitch said that was funny was accidental. He was able to play it off that way.
And I think Bateman just a little bit too good looking for the role.
That's a good point.
I come up with Michael J. Fox's character from Midnight Madness.
Ooh.
I think he could have pulled it off.
That's a deep dive there, Lacee.
Yeah,
well done.
The younger brother. Yeah. Yeah. And there's the other wolf connection because his older brother was Naughton, American Werewolf. And never mind.
Yeah. This movie had a running time of an hour and 48 minutes. It was released August 7th, 1985, rated PG. Had a budget of only $8 million. Opening weekend, about $2.5 million. Total worldwide gross, 12, almost 13 million. Looks like it wasn't released overseas. There's only records for the USA worldwide gross there. So some critical responses here. It holds 73% on Rotten Tomatoes as of May of 2020. And David Anson wrote in his review for Newsweek, when it's good, the dormitory hijinks feels like a genuine release of teenage tensions and cruelty. Too bad the story isn't as smart as the kids in it. Chicago Sun-Times film critic Roger Ebert awarded the film 3.5 stars out of 4, saying that it contains many pleasures, but one of the best is its conviction that the American campus contains life as we know it. In his review for the Globe and Mail, Salem Alatin wrote, producer Brian Grazer craved a feel-good picture, and she, Martha Coolidge, turned into the summer's best, and yet she didn't cheat to do it. There's a heart in the kookiness. Real genius has real people, real comedy, and real fun. Lacey, these one of them is kind of negative, but I think most of the other ones, including Roger Ebert, who's hit or miss, seems to kind of get this film.
Yeah, and I think that if you think about the late 70s and the early 80s, most of the movies that you got that involved teenagers were like teen sex comedies. And, then you had John Hughes, which was very much a coming of age. But let's face it, at that age, what are you looking for? So there's always still that like underlying sexual tension. And for this, it was basically a straight up caper movie with some comedy and like a lighthearted romance. There wasn't a lot of, it was a little bit more, pure. I think that's what he meant by saying she didn't cheat. And I think that's very, very true.
Yeah, a good point.
Yeah.
So there are some alternate versions of this film. The UK theatrical video versions were censored for the 15 certificate. The line, "You can't hammer a 6-inch nail through the board with your penis," was removed for obvious reasons. The 2002 DVD is uncut. I guess that's the one that I have. But reading this next thing kind of reminds me that I may have seen it on basic cable first. An edited version of Real Geniuses appeared on American television. Some of the language had been altered. For instance, penis was pinky, bastard to bonehead, and Jesus to God. Also, instead of the children playing in the popcorn in the final credits roll, we see a long-distance high-angle shot of Professor's house as he comes home and discovers the popcorn. So that's interesting. One of the other cool things about this film is the soundtrack. It's got a lot of cool soundtrack song on there. Song "You Took Advantage of Me," "The Tough Do What," "Summertime Girls" by Y&T, "The Pleasure Seekers" by The System, "The Walls Come Down" by The Call, "I'm Falling," performed, as I mentioned earlier, by the Comstat Angels. What else we got here? Oh, "All She Wants to Do Is Dance" by Don Henley, of course. And then, of course, we've got "Everyone Wants to Rule the World." What's interesting, though, is as of 2018, the songs on this film's soundtrack were available on iTunes except for the 3. "The Tough Do What," "I'm Falling," and only one. Lacey, what is your take on the soundtrack? To me, even though a lot of these songs were not the biggest hit, with the exception of probably "Everyone Wants to Rule the World," it definitely fit the tone of the film.
I agree, and I think that they really did. Their music supervisor or coordinator, if that was something that they actually had on the film. You never know. Sometimes directors like to go in and do that themselves when it comes to soundtracks. But I think that I think it was Lee who was saying earlier, talking about the montages, like really picking the exact right music for the montages really kind of set the tone for the rest of it. I am not a music person, with the exception of music from films. I couldn't tell you if the Beatles sing a song, but if I've heard that song in the movie yesterday, I could tell you that the Beatles sang it.
Nice.
So
very cool.
For this, like for me, the music of this film, I would not recognize it unless I wouldn't recognize the name of the song. I would say, "Oh, that's the song from the scene where so-and-so in Real Genius."
Gotcha.
So
right. Yeah, that's good. That's how a lot of people remember songs. So there's so many songs I'll hear at work going, and I can name that scene in the film that it was, not necessarily what album it was on. So that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Lee, you kind of referenced the music earlier. I wanted to know if you wanted to expand on that more.
It's just, it's that kind of purely crafted 80s soundtrack where the songs work. It's not, once you start getting into the 90s and they realize, you can sell these soundtracks where they're like, okay, we got this next up and coming band, we're going to put it in here. These just, the only big name that they had in this, I don't think, Bryan Adams is in this, but he wasn't big at that point. But Don Henley was.
Right.
Because he'd had the Eagles and then, had been solo for a while. But they really, I think they crafted this. And that's something that, only Tarantino does anymore.
It's a good point.
Everybody else is like, okay, how are we going to sell this album? How are we going to get these artists in front of a audience?
Lacey, you had a point?
I would add James Gunn to that specification.
Yeah, definitely.
He is
Especially
he is very curative with his soundtracks.
Yeah. Definitely.
Kyle, Edgar Wright. You can also add Edgar Wright to that as well.
Yeah, Edgar Wright,
Nice.
he as well. Yeah, good point. Any other comments on the soundtrack, Kyle?
Oh, this is, like Lee said, this is a great 80s soundtrack. And the great thing about this is exactly what Lee said. This is when they were doing soundtracks, not thinking about, how are the album sales of the soundtrack going to be? I really don't think that started. I think it even kind of started somewhat in the 80s when people were buying up the Footloose soundtrack like it was going out of style. And I think that kind of started turning the light bulb on. And then by the late 80s, early 90s, it was like, okay, what monetary can we get out of the soundtrack?
Yeah, good point. Before we head to our network promo break and then on to the trivia, I just want to mention the filming locations, of course. It took place in Southern California, San Diego, of course, Pomona College. You actually have the address for Dr. Hathaway's house, so maybe we can make a trip down there sometime. That'd be kind of fun. Occidental College there in Eagle Rock, Los Angeles, and then Crystal Springs Ranch, Canyon County. So before we get to our trivia and a few other things, we're going to take a quick break and let you know what other great podcasts are here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to the Fandom Podcast Network and all of the other awesome shows we have to offer. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture news podcast. Bloody Kings, our Highlander podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite pop culture topics. End Zone, the NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s and 90s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a new Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can also find us on Facebook under Fandom Podcast Network. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to Couch Potato Theater. We are talking about one of the coolest comedies of all time. Let's just admit it, guys. Real genius. Great. I think it's kind of cult status. Would you guys say that? Let me ask you, Lacey. This is one of those films that, like you guys have mentioned that you could say a line from it. Some people will get it, some won't. So maybe it falls under cult status as opposed to like a major like comedy type of situation. What do you think?
I think the concept of a cult classic film has kind of changed over the years. I mean, it used to be that the nerds were the ones that kind of, had their secret loves of whatever they happened to be passionate about. And so that's how you kind of found your people. You would say a quote from a movie and you'd know that like, oh, these are my people. And now cult classic doesn't necessarily mean the same thing anymore. I think it's I mean, I don't even know how to describe it at this point, but I think that Real Genius is something that people have revisited. And just going to the past, say 10, 15 conventions I've been to. I mean, Val Kilmer is starting to do conventions again. He was actually supposed to be at Fanboy Knoxville last year or this year. The time, it's all gone. But,
it was supposed to be this year. Yeah.
Yeah. But the GalaxyCon I went to in, was that South Carolina? Last year, year before, I found several artistic, some artists who have done some original art from Real Genius. Wow. And that's not something that's super common. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point on the cult classic stuff there. Now, when it comes to trivia, we got some tidbits here we're going to talk about, but let's just go ahead and talk about the Popcorn House here, okay? And I'm going to read some stuff here. First of all, Mythbusters in the episode Car vs. Rain, first broadcast in June 2009, the Mythbusters team tried to determine whether the final scene in the film, the destruction of Dr. Hathaway's house with a laser-popped popcorn, is actually possible. First, they used a 10-watt laser to pop a single kernel wrapped in aluminum foil, showing the popping corn is possible with the laser. Then they tested a scaled-down model of the house. The popcorn was popped through induction heating because of sufficiently large laser was not available. The result was that the popcorn was unable to expand sufficiently to break glass, but much less break open a door to move the house off its foundation. Instead, it ceased to expand and it was simply charred. But I want to talk about the popcorn trick sequence. It began with the construction of a full-size Victorian frame house on a plot in Sand Canyon, California, not far from Los Angeles. Within that house, special effects coordinator Phil Corey and his crew devised an elaborate network of conveyor belts, hydraulic lifts, air blowers, vacuum hoses, which would on cue turn 190,000 pounds of popcorn into a hot buttered tornado, blowing out the windows and doors of the structure. And producer Brian Grazer explained, to put it as simply as possible, the entire set was an enormous popcorn popper. That still, however, was not enough. When more popcorn was needed to complete the deluge, the Lapidus Popcorn Company of Los Angeles, California, pitched in with an additional 90,000 cubic feet. Grazer added, we eventually used enough popcorn to feed 720,000 moviegoers, each eating the largest tub sold at theaters. At retail, the cost would have been, now this is retail probably back in the theaters back then, was about $1,800,000. But since we're among the world's largest consumers of popcorn, if for only about 5 minutes we received a substantial discount. Let's talk about this. Lee, this is one of the probably most iconic scenes in the film, but also in comedies, I would assume.
It is. I just had a comment to make on the Mythbusters episode. Their science is wrong because when the house is scaled down, they're actually increasing structural integrity to all the glass. Having studied architecture, when you make the windows smaller, the house allows more support, but the taller and wider that a window gets, the less support it has. So the math on that experiment is wrong. So they didn't disprove anything on it. But I absolutely love the scene.
Sorry, I nodded off when you started talking science. You're such a nerd.
I'm a nerd. I'm not just a geek. I'm a nerd.
Proud of you, man. Lacey.
Well, and my comment to that was, the second you shrink the house, the popcorn kernels don't change size either. So there's a disconnect there as well. So I'm with Lee on that concept. But as far as the popcorn scene in general, you got to figure back in 80, 85. I mean, a large popcorn at that point was like $3.75, and now it's almost $20. I mean, so you're talking about $5 million worth of today's popcorn. That's nuts.
This is true. Kyle, they have the smart. I have the dumb. What was your thought on this trivia here?
First of all, I'm just going to do the smart thing and call Haley to get all my proper answers. But no, what I find funny is this too. When we talk about this, I mean, this is a classic scene. I mean, I especially remember loving watching the kids playing in the popcorn and diving in the popcorn at the end of the film. But then Lacey brings up the point, wow, we've had major popcorn inflation over the last It's popcorn. Come on now, but no, it's a great scene. I love the use of laser, and let's not forget the other aspect of this is Kent going into Hathaway's house, still thinking he's talking to Jesus, and then when the laser comes through the stained glass window.
For the Tanning Invitational staged by Chris Knight to introduce the sexually deprived classmates to the student body of the Wanda Trossler School of Beauty, the production unit moved to the Veterans Administration Hospital in Sepulveda. Producer Brian Grazer explained we needed an auditorium in which we could rig a swimming pool, and a theater at the VA hospital had an orchestra pit, which was perfect for that purpose. It's nice to know the veterans still are giving, so that's good.
We had our theater when I was at the University of Iowa at Hansher Hall had an orchestra pit, and the entire time I was there, I wanted to find enough nerds to make that happen, but like they had security guards, we couldn't do it.
Oh, that's a bummer. All of the laser technology in Real Genius was the real thing, sponsored by Professor Martin Gunderson of the University of Southern California, USC. Gunderson's credentials included a stint with the Los Alamos National Laboratory, where he attempted to develop an infrared laser which would separate uranium with conventional problems of nuclear waste. Lacey, I think they got the right nerds for this film.
Yeah.
This is something I thought was interesting. At the time this film was made, lasers were being used in medicine to weld detached retinas in communications, coupled with fiber optics to carry information over telephone lines, and also in video recordings with laser discs, later to evolve into DVDs in energy conservation and other fields. Laser discs, woo! Milton, one of the fellow geeks seen at the pool party, as mentioned earlier by Lacey, was played by Dean Devlin. He went on to become producer of larger films such as Stargate, Godzilla, and Independence Day series. Kyle.
One of the pieces of trivia that I absolutely love is, with one notable exception, the antics in this film are based off stunts pulled off in higher educational institutions such as England's Cambridge University, and also with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Caltech. That's just awesome. The fact that most of these things were actually things that had really been pulled off is just even makes that much better.
Yeah, it makes the writing a lot easier, but nice to know they actually happened in real life. Lacey?
Yeah, to mirror the scene where Kent's car is in his room, I have heard a personal story of the headmaster's car at the Lovett School being deconstructed and then reconstructed on the roof of the back in the 60s.
I can't imagine someone taking apart a car just to do a stunt like that. That's amazing.
You know, when you get 20-something people together and they all know what they're doing, that's a well-oiled machine.
This literally, yes. Lee?
Yeah.
I also want to point out Dean Devlin. One of my favorite things he ever did after Stargate was Librarians, which is a whole bunch of rebellious nerds saving the world.
Yes.
So he's got a niche.
That's a good point. As Lacey mentioned earlier, if you actually want to see that very brief moment that Tom Hanks appears, it's around 11 minutes and 54 seconds in. Definitely looks very young. The California Institute of Technology was known as Caltech, became a role model for mythical fiction Pacific Tech in this picture. This included areas ranging from the terminology to teaching methods to clothing styles. And last but not least, James Roday has stated that the character Sean Spencer from the show Psych is an homage / copy of the character of Chris Knight of Real Genius, as played by Val Kilmer. Lacey, did you ever pick up on that watching that show?
Oh, absolutely. And watching Psych, just the number of Val Kilmer references in Psych was one thing, but the final episode, not spoiler, but there's a Val Kilmer cameo, which is fantastic.
Which Sean actually sends him a letter thanking him for all the inspiration. So it's I actually just finished watching the second Psych movie with my dad, and we've decided to do a rewatch of the entire series. Check out Psych on Peacock, everyone.
Yeah. Funny about that. That takes place in Santa Barbara, actually, but it's filmed up in Vancouver.
Santa Barbara's not a real place. Real people don't live there.
And you have to find the pineapple reference in every episode, apparently, too. So, I want to ask your guys about a television series. There has not been a remake of this film, which is good, but reports surfaced in September of 2014 that a potential television series was in the works. NBC was set to produce the comedy series with Sony TV, Happy Madison, and 3 Arts Entertainment. As of December 2017, there was no updates on this production. Kyle, would you like to see a television series of Real Genius?
It would be hard because I can't think of somebody right now who I could see in the Chris Knight role per se. The other issue is I think this happens at some point with all the streaming services now and all of them looking for new and retro things that they can remake for new original content. Real Genius is screaming to be that kind of content, but the way the 80s are being just grabbed up left and right, and just the concept of this show today, I mean, this could be, if done right, could be in like the new version, a new Big Bang Theory in a way.
Right. That's actually a good point. Yeah. But the question is, you need someone to pull off Chris's character, not necessarily imitate, but someone that's charismatic enough that could carry a show like that, because that's definitely a crucial part. Lacey, I see you pondering this deeply. I want to get your opinion on this. Do you want to see a TV series like this based off, Chris Knight and, his motley crew of nerds?
I really don't think that you'd have to go the other way with it. Like, you can't. I'm trying to figure out how, because you've essentially got a heist movie in the first one. It's the underlying concept is a heist. They have to get in and figure out what's going on, and then they have a task. I don't know if that would work on maybe they could do a one-shot series, maybe like a one season. I don't know that it would really. Formula wise, I don't know that that you can't find a bad guy. There's not like a big bad each year, that kind of thing.
They would have to probably introduce some type of like science MacGuffin that is kind of done throughout the whole series. And then you kind of you explore each other's characters a little bit more and relationships. Yet you still have to have like the jerk professor and the kiss butt assistant. Kyle,
I think you could at least do 2 seasons of this, because the first season could focus a lot on Mitch adapting to college life, and maybe even have the season cliffhanger be with the laser kind of being the undertone through it, and then the season cliffhanger being maybe finally them. The eureka moment with the laser, and then the whole second season being the heist kind of season.
What about you, Lee?
Yeah, I see it. I see this starting with Chris getting to college, being recruited, and it would take actually even more skilled actor than we've talked about, because he would have to be Mitch turning into Chris over a period of time, and there would have to be that. You'd have to have somebody really good as Laszlo, but I already know who should play Dr. Hathaway, John Hannah.
Oh, yes.
His ability is...
Remind me who John Hannah is?
He was the drunk brother in The Mummy.
Ah, yes, okay.
But he was also Badiatus in Spartacus.
Thank you.
Depending on the scene he was in, you either loved him or hated him, depending on who he was working with.
Excuse me for interrupting, Lee. He actually has a new show on NBC called Transplant, where he's like the superstar surgeon at a hospital. It's worth a check out. Okay.
Lacey, another comment?
Yeah, I think that they could gender swap it and give McKenna Grace the Mitch role.
Who's McKenna?
She was the little girl from Gifted. I think that's her name.
Yeah, okay.
Is McKenna Grace, right? And she was, unstoppable in these.
That's actually a good idea. I like that.
Those scenes with Chris Evans. She really held her own, and she was able to get through all the dialogue of the very adult dialogue. If it had been made, when when that came out, when that news article came out, they could have gone with Abigail Breslin.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Cool.
Because a lot of things are being gender swapped now, and then you have a little bit of leeway. It's really hard to replace Val Kilmer. He's so iconic in the role that it's almost easier to flip it so that you don't have that comparison that's automatic.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
But it needs to be subtle and like perfect timing too, because he just stumbles into every line, but like naturally. There's no like, aha, here's my joke. Like he delivers it. And he's on to the next line, and then you realize something funny happened, and you can't stop laughing, so you hit pause.
That's right. That was one thing I noticed is like people are, you're laughing, and then you just miss something else. So definitely. Before we wrap this up, we want to talk about merchandise a little bit because there's not much. Lacey, yeah?
I'm sorry. Were we going to try and figure out what role Taylor Lautner was going to play?
Kent.
Oh, no, Taylor Lautner is Kent.
Is he Kent? I'm just making sure.
Taylor Lautner is Kent, definitely.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we had that covered.
Because if anybody's going to be a specialist with a mirror, it's the pretty boy.
Yeah. Or he's someone at the beauty school, one of those people, I guess. So
he's the main instructor at the beauty school.
Don't you know these will give you huge pecs?
Damn you, Autry, you haunt me. I want to talk about merchandise because there's not much. You can get T-shirts that say, I love toxic waste. Or what Lacey has there, what does that say? Surf Nicaragua? Mm-hmm. Well played.
Yeah.
There is a Funko Pop of the Chris Knight character that you can find somewhere. I actually was looking at online. Some people have gotten it signed as well. I did not know there was one that existed, but I think that is great. You can find that. But I don't know of any other merchandise out there. Have you seen anything else, Lacey?
I do vaguely remember a more visible selection of alien ears, those
Deedly boppers.
What are they called? Bobbers?
Deedly boppers.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that being a thing for a minute when I was in high school. Just kind of, but other than that, as far as like licensed, there are about 6 different T-shirts you can go through. I have all of them. This is the only one I could find because I just moved. But
So Kyle, there's a Funko Pop here of Chris Knight. I got to assume that the library that it is now that contains all of the licensing agreements with Funko Pop and all the different movies and characters that they cover. I haven't seen anything else. Have you?
No, I really haven't. But if there's a Funko Pop, I'm sure our good friend Kat owns it.
This is true. Yes. I think this movie, and I want to get your opinion on this before we close out here, especially you, Lacey. I would love this movie to have some type of anniversary edition. I know you can find a Blu-ray version of this, but I think it's from overseas. I can't remember if there is one. I still have my original DVD because I like it. But I would love this to get some maybe more special features, just some new interviews. Have the director Martha come on, and even Val Kilmer talking about it. I don't know if you would, but what do you think about that? Would you like to see something like that?
Are we talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say a commentary with Val Kilmer and the rest of the cast would be fantastic. I've listened to several of Val Kilmer's commentaries over the past, however long. His commentary with Robert Downey Jr. on Kiss Kiss Bang Bang might actually rival the film in its humor. Like, it's absolutely... on a given day, if someone says that they want to watch that, I'm like, yeah, but do you want to watch the commentary though? It's so funny. It's so good. So I would love to see him doing a commentary on that again, on Real Genius. And I think that just going back to some of the original, I love to see original scripts and what their notes are. I'm a big fan of the PDF version of the, remember when DVDs used to come with a DVD ROM?
Yeah.
I was that guy who would like plug it in. I'd print out the script and read all the, so.
Now you make me want to go back and listen to the audio commentary of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. That's cool.
Oh
Kyle, do you think this movie deserves a better treatment on physical media?
I would like to see it get one. I just don't know if there's a version out there that exists that would be considered an upgrade version. Like I said, I think you'd have to go with a commentary or something like that. I don't know how much of cut footage there is on the floor or anything like that, but I would like to see a revisit of this and get Val Kilmer involved and get the cast involved. I think that's really the best way to go about it, because I mean, really, this is one of those 80s movies that is just so much fun. And I think people forget how much fun it is until they watch it again.
Yeah. Lee, do you think now that Val Kilmer is starting to make public appearances at conventions, obviously, and he probably signs more either Top Gun or Willow stuff, and maybe occasional Heat stuff. I don't know if there is, but do you think that he would do something like that? Do you think he's warmed up to this film again and would want to explore that?
I would hope so. Watching this movie, you can tell everybody had fun on it. Like, this doesn't look like you couldn't have these performances on a combative set. This really would have been very collaborative. This really would have been, everybody's kind of in each other's pockets on this. So I would see this as being something he would probably be enthusiastic about, especially being one of his early films, an early lead. It's this one and Top Secret, really. And then he went co-star for a long time, and then he finally started getting lead roles again with The Doors. But I think this would be a really good one for a new transfer. I love the idea of having a good audio commentary, but one where they actually think about it beforehand, because I always listen to them, and sometimes it's just dead air. And hey, remember when we did that? Yeah, that was fun. That's not why I'm listening to your audio commentary. I want to know more about the craft.
Yeah, and share some fun stories that we obviously were not privy to. That's a good point, Lacee.
I think the best commentaries out there are the ones that have that kind of perfect storm, that middle ground between film knowledge and process for the director, and then the on-set hijinks, the production of it, things that went wrong, that kind of stuff. It's kind of that middle ground where they have interesting information for people. Like, when you listen to the Braveheart commentary, it is 100% director this. There's nothing that is 100% informational for someone who wants to be a director.
Right. Yeah.
And then you have like the Benny and June commentary, which is just the director saying what's happening on the screen at the time, which was weird because it already had a voice soundtrack for the blind.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to there's a middle ground there that you have to kind of walk the line so that you get everyone interested.
Lee?
I was just going to say, I realized they did have a sequel, and it was the television series Numbers. They actually used the same locations. The hallway that he's running down to when he realizes the ice thing is one that they constantly use. It's a whole bunch of nerds that work for the government that do random experiments for fun. They've got the crazy guy who lives in the steam tunnels. And it's all there. It was post 9/11, so everyone's fine being a government stooge. So it had a sequel.
There you go. Now, as we wrap this up, guys, I want to get your current reflection on the movie now. Where does it stand? Do you recommend it? How rewatchable is it for you? Kyle, I'm going to start with you.
This is absolutely a 100% rewatchable film. It had been a bit since I had seen it, so watching this for this podcast was a great refresher. This is one of those movies that I think most people should try to watch it at least once every couple of years, because it just is fun, and it reminds you of how much fun it is. And it's everything from that time period, and it works well. The cast has fun. You sit back, you have fun with it. It's quippy, it's science-y, it's Val Kilmer-y. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a great. I've said this before, but it's another one of these movies that falls into its time capsule. And yes, it's really out of the cable circulation at this point, but I can remember when it was in cable circulation, there's always something I'd stop and at least watch a little bit of it before I had to go somewhere, or if I was home the rest of the way, I'd watch it through because it is just that much fun. But you know what? Definitely go rewatch Real Genius. It is a couch potato theater type of film. And with that, I got some Spike training I need to go work on.
Lee, give us your final thoughts on this film.
Well, I can already do the Spike thing, so I'm good on that. But this is, definition of couch potato theater. I watched this the first time on a couch. And it's still to this day, if this is on, I will watch it till the end. It's right up there with Christmas Story, that it does not matter what scene you drop in on, you watch to the very end, because it just, A, it's that good, and B, it reminds you of, like, the jokes don't get old. If the jokes, you know the setup and you know the punchline, and you realize they're still good. And as much as this is 80s, there's no kitschy 80s to it. You know, it takes place then, but it could take place somewhere else.
Except for that jacket the professor wears at the beginning of that science fair, man. That thing is just, it just says 80s! 80s!
I had that jacket.
And let's not forget the boom boxes with microphones in the lecture hall. That's pretty 80s.
Well said. Lacee, first of all, thank you for coming on. This has been fun. I'd love to have you again. What is your final thoughts on Real Genius?
Well, I had a great time talking with y'all. I think that this is definitely one of my favorites. It's been on my top 25 list because I'm that person that can't have a top 10. It's been on the list forever. And back when VHS and DVD were more common, I mean, everybody streams now, but I actually had more than one copy, because if someone I know hadn't seen it before, I would loan them my copy, but then the second I handed it to them, I'd be like, oh, but I need to watch it again. So I actually had more than one copy so that I could loan them out. And in my DVD collection, it is actually shelved between, I want to say it's right after Gun-Shy and right before Hackers.
Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. By the way, I think you've done Alex Autry and Taylor Lautner proud today, so appreciate that very much. Hashtag
Boys.
new real co-host.
Nice.
Yeah, I like her better than Alex.
Yeah. What's interesting about this, I'm looking at this DVD of Val Kilmer. Remember, and we always joke about this, but I love bringing it up again. Remember when special features were bonus trailers, interactive menus, scene selections, audio, English, Dolby surround?
Don't be bashing internet interactive menus now.
And when they used to do like the filmographies.
Yes.
That was like the best thing. Everyone's like, oh, what else has this person been in?
Well done.
I just rewatched Soldier, and it had like the most VHS special features I've ever seen on DVD. It was literally like I'm looking at VHS and somehow able to interact with it. It was so bad.
Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun talking about this 85 classic that is Real Genius. Kyle, as always, thank you, sir.
It is always a blast to do this. And you know what? I think we have to hook up something here with original OG real co-host and new real co-host.
That would be entertaining, definitely. Lee, as always, man, it's good to nerd out on movies with you.
Yeah, it's been a blast and one of my favorites.
And Lacee, again, welcome to the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. I really did have a great time, and I am absolutely ready to come back anytime you need me.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us here on the Fandom Podcast Network and Couch Potato Theater's special presentation of Real Genius. Again, I'd like to thank Kyle, Lee, and Lacee. And until next time, we will see you on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.